At Black Nerds Create, we love all things fandom and creation, and we especially love fantasy. That's why we're excited for our newly named Black Magical History Month coming in February. Black Magical History Month is our 6th annual celebration of Black stories, characters, and fans across different fantasy media. Get ready for a month of digital events, challenges, and community turn-ups all across social media. To stay up to date and get more information, go to blacknerdscreate.com.
I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard NOC Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color. You see me? The Hard NOC Life. Comics, movies, and TV. Yeah.
Welcome to Hard NOC Life. I'm Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
Dominic is off once again this week, but we do have a special guest co-host. He's been on the podcast several times. He's basically a member of the podcast family. He is part of the podcast family because the Middle Geeks is one of the best podcasts on the network. He is our Flash expert, and he recently reviewed Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania for But Why Though. Please welcome back to Hard NOC Life, Swara Saleh.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on again, you guys. I've missed y'all and I'm very happy to be here right now.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but as I said, you kind of are the perfect guest for this episode because we're going to spend an inordinate amount of time on two things. Last week we didn't cover the Super Bowl, one because we recorded ahead of the Super Bowl, so I didn't know what trailers or exactly the content of the trailers. But after watching the Super Bowl and the trailers that dropped, I could not talk about The Flash, so we're going to spend a good portion of the podcast talking about The Flash trailer. And we're also on the heels of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania's release. And as I mentioned, Swara did a review for But Why Though, and I think it's going to have an interesting conversation about Ant-Man. But before we do, how's everybody doing?
I'm doing good. Hanging in there. It's been really cold in California. It's been really cold, so it's just
which is like summer for us, right, Swara?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's been cold, so just trying to get used to that. But I still drink iced coffee, so it's kind of like I'm just making it worse for myself.
I've actually heard that you're supposed to have cold drinks and meals in order to adjust to the cold, but I will never do that. I'm a soup guy. I need it hot. I'm doing well. We have kind of floppy weather right here in the DMV area, like he was talking about. There are cherry blossoms blooming already, which is a very bad sign, climate change. But on a personal level, I'm doing well. Very thankful for the 3-day weekend and being able to have some breathing room and just chill, and very happy to be on with y'all again.
Yeah, no, so let's get into it. Let's not wait any longer. God knows we've waited long enough for this movie. But the only trailer that mattered during the Super Bowl, at least in my opinion, and it's unfortunate, before we get into everything that I kind of loved about the trailer, I do want to start with the obvious disclaimer that because this movie stars Ezra Miller and all the allegations against them, we have to acknowledge that up front that they are very problematic, and all of the charges against them are still pending, or some aren't even pending. Some have been prosecuted, right? Understanding all of that, this is not an endorsement of Ezra's behavior, and that movie was too far in post-production to replace them with Grant Gustin or whoever. There was all the rumors and all the kind of wish casting. So that said, what did you guys think of our first real look at The Flash?
I hate that it looks so good. I hate it because it's just like you were saying, I don't support anything that, Ezra has done. It's so unfortunate that this movie has such a problematic lead because the film just looks like so much fun. I saw it again, on the big screen last night because I saw Ant-Man last night. So just seeing it, I literally did the whoo when we saw Michael Keaton, embarrassingly really loud. But I don't know, it just looks so good. And it, again, it's just frustrating that it's because then I'm like, do I want to have Michael Keaton suffer because of Ezra Miller? And then, or Sasha Calle. Yeah, and you just start thinking of everyone else that you're like, oh, and it gets into that territory of this is because one person's problematic. Do you want to ruin everyone else's money? Then you're like, oh yeah, I don't know. It's such a double-edged sword of thing.
Swara, you actually had a similar tweet about when the Flash trailer came out about it looks incredible. Sasha Calle looks incredible, but Ezra's in the center, and the dilemma. I mean, that's the dilemma. That was the dilemma going into this movie from Jump Street, right?
I mean, yeah, I'm just like totally on board with Britney that it looks incredible. Andy Muschietti, who directed its parts 1 and 2. The first one is an incredible film. Second one, I think, had some issues, but still, like overall, quite a riveting film. Like, he is a really visionary filmmaker. He clearly knows what he wants to do with this Flash film, which has been in development hell for like what seems like a decade, which is crazy. As a lifelong DC fan, this is giving me everything I want. It's giving me Supergirl in the big screen. Not that we haven't had Supergirl in the big screen before, like in the bad 1970s film or 1980s film, but like for real, like, and Michael Keaton Batman, like that is my favorite Batman other than Pattinson. Like, I love the Batman, but Batman and Batman Returns are two of my favorite films of all time. Absolutely iconic, and what Tim Burton and Michael Keaton did with the role. And I know it's like, yeah, I see your poster of the Keaton. Yes, I need to get one of those for myself.
My shrine to Michael
Keaton.
Keaton.
Exactly. So good. It's just like this is giving me everything I want, and not just in a fan servicey way. Andy Muschietti, I can tell he knows what he's doing. He knows what he wants to convey to audiences and how he wants to utilize these characters. And it's just like, I hate to say this, but I understand why WB execs and James Gunn have been like, this is one of the best comic book films of all time. We can see it from the trailer. We can like get that vibe from the trailer. And I just hate that someone so problematic and like who has committed legit crimes like Ezra Miller is still the main star. And it's irony that we are so invested in this film already for everyone but the title character of the Flash. It's just like, I would have loved it if they could have somehow reworked it into another title or something like that, but probably because of contracts and what Ezra was able to get, like, through promising that they would rehabilitate themselves, this is what we're getting. And I do think that a lot of like hard work has been put into it by the actors, by Muschietti, and it's just like, it's a really unfortunate situation, and bandwidth will vary, and we consume media all the time that's by problematic people. Just that, like, we can't deny that with Ezra Miller, it's another level. And I don't know. I don't have the answers. I can only speak for myself and say, I hate Ezra Miller. I think they're a terrible person, but this looks incredible. Please don't hate me for being excited about
and that's the thing too. Like you mentioned, that if we were to dispose of all art by problematic people, we'd have no art to consume, right? Like it may sound like I've just been like stalking your Twitter thread, but like you recently tweeted about the Roald Dahl estate and how it's kind of setting a dangerous precedent to like
whole thing.
Go in and let's start kind of like removing anything that's been problematic in like literature that was written decades ago, right? We don't want to be in a position where we can kind of like turn a blind eye to problematic things. That said, I get why you don't want to give money. I don't buy R. Kelly records for a reason. You know what I'm saying? I don't, but in this situation, I mean, I don't buy R. Kelly records. I still listen to Michael Jackson. I mean, if a Miles Davis record comes on, I can't turn it off, right? Like Miles Davis said horrible things. This doesn't have to be a conversation about separating art from artists, because I know that's a whole other can of worms. But what do you do in that situation, right? Like when it's tough. Yeah. It's tough, man.
It's really tough, because it's not like, I feel like in this situation, I don't know, maybe more people involved in the film are problematic, but we don't know about that. So it's just like, when there's only one problematic person that for sure, it's kind of just like you feel bad about making pretty much maybe everyone else suffer for that, because also then if this film doesn't do well, it's unfortunately gonna be another setback for DC. And we keep saying how we want DC to have a win and stuff, and it's just unfortunate that this win might kind of be a little bit soured by Ezra. I don't know. There's rumors always flying around that they're going to find a way to rework it where Grant Gustin is the Flash now. But it's like, he's been the Flash for so long. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think even if that would happen,
I'm pretty sure Grant's the Flash anymore.
Yeah. So it's so like, I don't know. It's a really tough situation, but I'm so excited for the film. And then like, I love Michael Shannon. So it's just like.
But here's the funny thing, right? Like we talked about this last year when that initial teaser came out during Fandom, and it was, basically revealed that Ezra would be playing two characters, right? Like that was known even before this trailer dropped, that because when they had that initial fandom teaser, you saw two Ezra Millers in the shot. And even then, I think we discussed on the podcast, Britney, like, of course, at the time they didn't know what they were dealing with Ezra, right? Like all this problematic stuff happened in the last 2 years, like since the film went into production. But it's almost unfortunate. That's the like doubly unfortunate, like literally doubly unfortunate that Ezra's playing two versions of Barry. Like we said at the time, like that would have been a good opportunity to bring in like Grant or somebody else to be that second Flash. But now, like, you're not only replacing one Ezra Miller, you're replacing two Ezra Millers, right? So yeah, it's kind of like ignorance is bliss at this point, right? If you didn't know all the bad things Ezra Miller did, this would look like the best DC movie ever made. And it's hard to separate the two. But I mean, here's how magical this trailer was. For 3 minutes, I didn't give a crap about Ezra Miller. From Keaton to even Affleck, it made me love. I mean, I never hated Ben Affleck, but like even seeing his version of Bruce pop up in the trailer, I was like, well, damn. And then to see the events of Man of Steel, which I did not like. I hate the third act of Man of Steel. That's one of the worst things in all of the DCEU. And I like Man of Steel mostly, except for that. But even seeing that return, I'm like, wow, this was such a great kind of like bookend to the DCEU for them to then transition into the Gunverse.
I 1,000% agree. I personally never vibed with Zack Snyder's vision, unlike his many fans online. Come for me if you want. But I don't think that the castings were necessarily the problem, except maybe in one or two instances that I'll argue.
And Ezra.
And Ezra,
the biggest problem.
Yes, biggest problem. But no, like with this trailer, there's such an incredible energy throughout it that just takes you on this thrill ride in a really great way. It's funny, I've been using thrill ride in a negative way recently with superhero films, but I think in this one it's more apt in a positive way. It's about the manipulation through the time force and the reverberations throughout time and space, like how that's going to affect the previous films in the DCEU, like you mentioned, Keith. And it's just like, it looks so interesting. And I love that they chose certain powerful performances, especially from Sasha Calle as Supergirl. First off, she looks fantastic, and she's giving her all in this role. And I saw like when she tweeted out and on Instagram, she was like, I love Supergirl so much. She teaches me so much about hope. And I'm like, please let her still be Kara Zor-El in the DCU. By the way, she confirmed that she is Kara Zor-El Supergirl, not like Lara Lane Kent, like from the Injustice comics, which in fairness her design was based off of, but she is playing Kara Zor-El, like Kal-El's cousin. So I mean, just like from what I saw in that trailer, like, so we know that in the new DCU, one of the adaptations will be of Tom King's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which is a brilliant, amazing comic. Yes, Keith holding it right. Yeah, it's amazing. Like everyone should read it. I'm so excited for the film adaptation. I think that Sasha Calle as Supergirl in that film will be absolutely brilliant. I hope that what I really hope is, I mean, yeah, I hope the film does well and is critically well received, that WB execs will be like, maybe we should keep her like for Kara Zor-El in the new DCU. I just want them to recast like Ezra Miller at the end of the Flash film. I want them to rewrite the universe and it'll be a new cast. I don't think it'll be Grant Gustin. As much as we love Grant, he's played this role for like over a decade now, and let it be someone new. So, or better yet, also, like, listen, I love Barry, but I love Wally West more. I grew up on Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and Wally West will always be my main Flash. So let it be Wally West as the new Flash. I think that could be really great.
You know, and the funny thing is, like, we don't know anything about the DCU right now. And, you know, James Gunn mentioned that, like, Henry Cavill is not going to work as my Superman. And I've heard some of these rumblings online, too. Maybe that's because his Superman is John Kent, right? Because if the Batman in the DCU is based on Grant Morrison's Batman and Son story arc, Nightwing was Batman when Damian was Robin. So, like, is the Gunverse going to be, you know, John Kent and Dick as Batman? You know, I mean, probably not. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Clark and Bruce. But, you know, who knows at this point?
Not to burst your bubble, but he did specifically say it would be a father and son story.
I know.
So, yeah, and I do.
It's just that all the art that they used was like Dick is Batman.
Right. That maybe in another universe, another DC multiverse.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, that was based on what you were saying about maybe Flash is Wally, and you take all the legacy versions of these characters to kind of jump off of, which again, probably not. Most likely you're going to see a Clark Kent story and a Bruce Wayne story, which is totally cool, because you want to start, if this is a new universe, you want to kind of start with the whatever. But, again, we've made our Ezra disclaimer, but one of the things I did also appreciate about this trailer is that in addition to all of like the fan servicey stuff and then all the great effects and, Batman stuff, what I think is why this movie is so high on like Warner execs and James Gunn is the emotional core. The scene where Ezra said, where Barry says, "This is the one where my mom lives." Like, that's the emotional thoroughfare that I think is going to carry the movie. Because, Flashpoint is such an iconic story. It's been adapted several times now, even in the TV show we've talked about. And it's all because Barry...
Ezra was actually on that episode.
Well, he was in Crisis, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But Barry wanting to save his mom or live in the universe where his mom is still alive, that is the kind of emotional core that I think was missing through a lot of DC movies up until now, right? And I think that's where, the fact that he's willing to destroy everything just to save his mom, like, I think it's going to be as emotional as it is like spectacle. And that's the formula. That's what Marvel had for the first few phases of its run. Like, it connected the spectacle to the emotional. Mm-hmm. And I think, and we'll talk about this in the second half of the pod, I think where Marvel's kind of lost the thread in not just this movie, but in the last few movies, it's lost the emotion for the spectacle. And if DC can capture that and bring them both together, that's the form. That's the winning formula. I think that was Greg Berlanti's kind of like, that was his equation when he launched the Arrowverse. It's like spectacle plus emotion. And there was like a third factor too, but you know what I mean? And I think that's, to me, what got me the most. Well, no, what got me the most was seeing Michael Keaton say, "I'm Batman." That was like, got everybody. Mm-hmm. But what made me realize, like, no, this is going to be a really good movie, was that one line that Barry says, "This is the world where my mom lives."
Yeah. I don't know. I'm probably going to see this movie, so don't hate me, anyone listening. But yeah.
Like, yeah, at the same time, like, this may sound pretty bad, but I feel like we should also kind of like direct our energies better than like hating people for liking something, or watching something, you know what I mean? Like, just because you're watching and enjoying a movie doesn't necessarily mean you're endorsing every single contributor to that. But it is what it is. Sometimes you got to just bow down to the beast, I guess.
It's not even bowing down. It's just like realizing that we have limits. And the thing is, like, we're nerds. We do this for a living. Like, we need to see these things, so it's like different from maybe more general audiences. But at the same time, it's like people going about their daily lives just because they watch or consume something they may not know enough about or even might have heard about. It's just like, there's so much going on in the world. And I think like what's important is having an open and honest conversation about people like Ezra, about other problematic actors and other things, and let people decide, whether or not they feel like going and watching that. And it's like, there are certain things, I try to avoid, but I don't begrudge others for not avoiding. I just like, again, have that open and honest conversation. Then maybe in the long run, things can change. And I think like things have changed to some degree or another, like in Hollywood, or at least there's more of a microscope on like, a certain person's individual actions, and that will, hopefully sway someone in a more positive direction. But yeah, like, I'm going to see this film. I'm going to acknowledge everything Ezra has done. I will like say, this is, knowing these things, like, will you go and see it? It's like, I make sort of like an analogy to like vegetarianism, or like, I've been vegetarian for like over 8 years, and then I became pescatarian, and I never advocate anyone to like change their diet. I would always say, no, just know where your food comes from and make decisions based off of that. So sort of similar here.
I mean, June 16th, I'm going to be there. I think everyone on this podcast is going to be there.
Yeah.
And
I will also most likely have a screening, so I won't pay money for it. So there we go.
Hey.
Well, I've already kind of like decided I'm buying the 4K Blu-ray. I mean, I can't help it. Like, at the end of the day, I'm a DC stan. Like, that was always my preferred. I was never actually a Marvel fan growing up. Like, I was strictly DC. Batman was my favorite character. Superman was my second favorite character. Very basic, right? Like, who are your two favorite superheroes? The two oldest ones, right? But that was, that was why Brittany and I did a podcast together, was to talk about all the old DC shows we used to watch. So like, to Brittany's point earlier, seeing them kind of like come back and the excitement generated by a DC movie. But part of what was so disappointing over the last like 10 years was that like it was difficult to cape for them because I didn't like the material that much. And then the other people also caping for them were kind of terrible. It was like, saying you're a DC fan had a different stigma to it because of the actions of a very, vocal minority. And I don't mean, I'm not just casting aspersion on all Snyder fans. I actually liked the Snyder cut, right? Like, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was okay. But I did not like Batman versus Superman. And I did not like the last act of Man of Steel. And Suicide Squad was terrible, right? Like, you got to admit these things. And I didn't like them because I was a DC fan. It was not like, I'm just a shill for Marvel, which was such a weird, insult. Like, I wish Disney paid me to like give their movies good reviews.
Wouldn't that be great?
Anyway, let's take a break. Well, before we do, any final thoughts on The Flash?
I'm just excited. Like I said, Michael Keaton looks great, and it's gonna be fun.
Michael Keaton, Batman, chef's kiss, when he says like, yeah, I'm Batman. It's so good. I know what they're doing. I know it's nostalgia bait. I know it's fan service, but I will put on the clown makeup. I will go and watch it. Like, this is my bread and butter. I love Michael Keaton's Batman so much. Grew up watching Batman Returns, and I'm very excited. So I just like cross fingers that Ezra Miller will be recast when Barry Allen resets the universe. Please let that happen. Yeah. I mean, I think, but that's the other kind of like elephant in the room, is that if this movie does as well as everyone's anticipating it, like, it just gives Warner more incentive to keep them around, and that's kind of the double-edged sword of, and that's where I understand people's like, we should boycott or whatever, but like, it is what it is at this point. If we could go back in time and prevent them from casting Ezra to begin with, maybe, but at this point, and to your, I don't know what to think about like the future, because I think, the other dirty little secret is like James Gunn is friends with Ezra Miller. Like, that's how Ezra got into the Peacemaker finale, right? Like, he reached out to James, was like, hey, can I be in that? He was like, sure, and it's no coincidence that the only two remaining Snyderverse folks are Miller and Momoa, right? The two people who were at the end of Peacemaker, because they have a personal connection to James Gunn. So, I mean, that also makes me feel like it's unlikely they'll recast, but who knows? I mean, there's no Flash movie in at least the initial slate. That is very true. Yeah. So I guess we'll see. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Is it possible at this point for Ezra to be rehabilitated? Can their image be rehabilitated if they, admit to the wrongdoing and they've already said they're seeking therapy? Like, is there a world? Because I know in some people's minds, absolutely not. But is there a world where Ezra could be rehabilitated? I don't know.
I think it has to do with like the victims themselves, like of Ezra's like abuse and maltreatment, saying like that this is something. I mean, but that's an extremely heavy ask, I think, in any situation. And especially like, you don't want to be like a corporation, a huge entertainment corporation is pressuring them to do so. But like, I think like, in their statement, Ezra did like express at least some remorse, but I think there is just in general a long way to go. Maybe they've started the first step, but in an ideal world, it would have been like at least a year or two or a few years where the public could see them on their rehabilitation journey. But it's, ironically, like The Flash, it's moving a bit too quickly.
Yeah, I would just say too, like, if their issues are something that can genuinely be resolved through therapy, then like, yes, I hope that obviously then maybe eventually there will be some sort of like acceptance of them still being around. I don't want to necessarily say forgiveness, because forgiveness is 100% on the victims, as you were saying. So I just think it's a matter of if what they have going on with them is something that can be genuinely resolved through, like, therapy and whatnot. If not, it's just like, and at the end of the day, it's like, you can be a better person and no longer do those things, and not even because you're worried about your public image. Like, you can generally have healed and whatever it is that's caused you to act that way. But if people are still going to be a little bit like about you, like, there's unfortunately, like, there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to accept that there's just going to be people who are never going to be okay with what you did. So that's also the thing that I think Warner Brothers needs to accept, and also Ezra themselves need to accept that is a very well possibility.
This will be a very interesting press tour for this film.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I guarantee that Ezra's not going to partake in interviews unless they're very controlled interviews where maybe Entertainment Weekly or like Hollywood Reporter, and like, in order to get this interview, you can't ask about anything non-movie related. And then some journalists may say, well, then we're not going to do the interview. So like, I think, but I guarantee Warner is going to be very secure about what gets out
100%
in these kinds of interviews, and say, like, any interviewer who reaches that line and says, let's talk about, your accusers, they'll probably shut down the interview right then and there. Right. So, and I'm guaranteeing you're not allowed to ask Sasha Calle or, Michael Keaton or Ben Affleck or whoever else might be on the tour any of those questions either. So
yeah, totally.
Anyway, so as I was saying, we're going to take a break, and on the other side of the break, let's talk about the movie that's currently racking up all the big bucks in the box office, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Guess what? Goalie Nutrition is sponsoring Hard NOC Life, and you can go to goalie.com to buy apple cider vinegar gummies, their ashwagandha gummies, superfruit gummies, and super greens gummies. And you get 10% off plus free shipping if you use the code HARDNOC at goalie.com. This is honestly, I've been taking the goalie gummies now for a couple weeks, and I have to say, they're tasty and they're good for you. Have you guys been enjoying the goalie gummies?
I really like them. They're yummy, but it's a nice to add to my routine of already, I normally take just straight vitamin C, so it's nice to have extra supplements.
For a long time, people have praised the benefits of apple cider vinegar, and as someone who's had to drink straight apple cider vinegar sometimes when I'm not feeling well, or I have some joint pain, and your mom is like, drink some apple cider vinegar. It's not the most appetizing home remedy, let's just say.
No,
right.
It tastes horrible.
The apple cider part is ooh, does it taste like apple cider? And it's no, it tastes like vinegar. But ACV is very good for you, and the fact that Goalie has been able to put the ACV into these tasty little gummies made with pectin and fruit peels, which make them vegan, which is cool. So if you're vegan, you can still rock these gummies, because everyone knows gummies are usually made out of gelatin and nasty shit. These are made out of complete non-GMO, gelatin-free, gluten-free, vegan ingredients, and you can get the benefits, all of the benefits of apple cider vinegar, taking these tasty, delicious, convenient gummies. So go to goalie.com and use the code HARDNOC, that's HARDNOC, just like the podcast you're listening to. Get 10% off your purchase of Goalie products and free shipping.
It's a much better delivery device for that apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
These Goalie gummies are great. You get it, and it's a delicious little candy. And I've been enjoying the super fruits one. I did feel kind of refreshed after taking a few of those.
Yeah, no, but I'm loving them so far, and they're definitely tasty. If you just want tasty gummies, at least just eat them for the yumminess.
Yeah. So go to goalie.com, use the code HARDNOC, HARDNOC, get 10% off your purchase and free shipping at goalie.com with the code HARDNOC. I mean, Marvel just kind of prints money at this point. It's earned, I think, $130 million this weekend. And I think it's the biggest Ant-Man movie, but it's also the lowest rated. I think second lowest to Eternals in terms of critical reception. So I'll start off by just saying I didn't hate it as much as the worst critical reactions are, and I felt this way about a lot of the Marvel movies, and I think that's probably worse, to be honest. I don't have any kind of huge emotional reaction to any of these Marvel movies at this point. I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, I thought it was fine. I thought Michelle Pfeiffer was actually really great. She and Jonathan Majors were my favorite aspects of the movie. But other than that, yeah, it was kind of I mean, I knew going in it was going to be 90% CGI in these kind of not that creative looking environments. But, like I said, I was whelmed to to quote Robin from Young Justice, but wasn't blown away. And I wasn't like disgusted like a lot of like film Twitter is about Quantumania. So that's my thought, just kind of broadly. Brittany, where are you on Quantumania?
I definitely agree with Jonathan Majors and Michelle Pfeiffer giving the best performances in it.
I feel like people aren't talking about Michelle enough. Like the Jonathan Majors thing is pretty across the board, but like I was kind of like surprised by how great Michelle Pfeiffer was in this.
Yeah, I honestly would have loved more scenes of the two of them acting off of each other, because when they're together too, like Jonathan, they're both great in their scenes, like in their like characters individually, but then when they're together, it's just like acting. It was really good to watch them together. Shout out to Katie O'Brien though, who is a Black Lightning cast fam, and she was also on the last couple of seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so she's been around the superhero block. But yeah, I don't know, like Paul Rudd is always great, I think, in everything I've seen of him, so it's never like there's nothing, I don't know. And I've liked all the Ant-Man movies, but I think that maybe they could have been a little bit more brutal in this, because like it's Kang they're going up against, so I think that they could have done something a little bit more like, I hate to say it, but kill someone off.
Well, let's pause there and say, if you haven't watched Quantumania yet, from this point forward there will be spoilers, so let me just put that out there just in case we don't want to get any if you think we piss people off about Ezra Miller, wait till we piss people off about spoiling a movie that they haven't watched.
Yeah, no, I just feel like this one could have taken a little bit more risk with some of the established characters. I don't know. Like, I think all the Ant-Man movies I think they're all three of them honestly are pretty like decent as a trilogy. Like, they haven't done anything like terrible where I'm like, oh my God, don't make any more Ant-Man movies. But yeah, I think this last one could have had a little bit slightly higher stakes and kept to it. Because I really thought, like, at the end, it had me where I was like, oh, this is about to get real. This is about to get real. And then it kind of like, so I was just like, so close. So close.
Yes, that moment specifically, I imagine you were talking about when we thought that Scott and Hope were going to be stuck in the quantum realm. When they did that, I thought, oh my God, they're actually going to do this. They're actually going to leave us on a cliffhanger for upcoming films, and it would have been so great and compelling and exciting, but nope, they just get out of there along with the rest of the family. And that just really emblemized my own frustrations with this film, that it said it was going to go there with certain story arcs or characters, and it just didn't. It played it very safe. It didn't let the characters drive the plot. It was plot driving the characters. And Jonathan Majors is fantastic as Kang. He elevates every scene that he's in along with Michelle Pfeiffer. So we said this in our review on But Why Though, which y'all should check out. Like, the writing, that's where the main issue with this film comes from me, with the script by Jeff Loveness. It just didn't do these characters much service. It just like required them to be in this overarching connecting plot of the wider MCU and the new villain Kang. The way that Michelle Pfeiffer's character Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, one of the most brilliant characters in all of Marvel, was written was extremely frustrating. I'm sorry, but why wouldn't she tell anyone about Kang in the surface world? Why would she let her own sense of shame, while understandable, not let her warn people about a potential universe or multiverse ending threat after they just like have met Thanos and experienced him? Why was her plotline so contrived? There were so many contrivances in this movie, and I love the first two Ant-Man films. I love that they are like in their own corner of the MCU. They're doing their own thing. They know what they're about. They're heist films. They like are quirky. They're about family. They're just like, they're so wholesome. And I just like I genuinely hate that they decided to upfront the main new MCU villain in the third Ant-Man film, and they bereft us of a truly, really great and wholesome Ant Wasp family story. I'm sorry, but like the plot between Scott and his daughter Cassie was very thin. I didn't really buy their reconciliation moment. I think that the analog they made between people being in homeless camps at the beginning of the film and needing to help people being oppressed by this dictator in a completely different scenario, was extremely thin, weak, and really like insulting, really, to actually caring about real social issues. I'm sorry I'm going on and on, but there were many things I very much disliked about this film. I think it was a disservice to. I have another piece on But Why, though, talking about why I think that overconnecting characters in the MCU leads to a huge systemic detriment where they're not able to grow as much as they can, and everything is for the sake of the wider universe. And I think this film really falls into that trap really severely. I don't necessarily hate this movie. I gave it a 5 out of 10, so I consider it extremely mid, but it's aggressively mediocre, and that's what really frustrates me.
Well, you mentioned the interconnectivity, and I agree. I mean, I think that's kind of been Marvel's like problem for a minute now, since Endgame, honestly, right? Because I feel like they haven't figured out, like, Endgame was kind of, I mean, it was the perfect culmination, and they've been kind of like struggling to find a similar thread ever since. But if they are so interested in like this interconnectivity, and this is stupid to kind of like harp on, but I was thinking, like, did they forget he was a podcaster? Because that's the whole thing in Ms. Marvel, is that like Scott Lang has this like enormous podcast, and that's how she knows so much about the Avengers. Because like I thought just something small, the audiobook gag, if it was his podcast, just make it his podcast and not an audiobook. And then you have a little like connection to Ms. Marvel. Again, totally minor, no one should give a shit about. And at the end of the day, it's not important, but I was just like, he's not a podcast. Like, he's clearly not a podcaster. Right, like that
just
Scott
shows
Lang
they do the
podcast.
Interconnectivity sloppily,
right?
Like not having those fine details.
Because like I just thought, like, well, they could, that whole gag in the car would have just been a perfect, nod to the Ms. Marvel thing. But I totally agree. I will say that I thought the same thing about Janet. One thing that I did think about is that I didn't realize going in the title Ant-Man and the Wasp. The Wasp they were referring to was Janet, not Hope, because Hope doesn't do shit.
Yeah, she's barely. I don't know if she's barely in it because of her takes. I don't know if that's why she's not there that much, because of her.
Oh, well, I mean, we can talk about how like Evangeline Lilly no one is criticizing her anti-vax stance, where Letitia Wright got all the smoke about her, and you could argue Evangeline Lilly's anti-vax stance is way worse than Letitia Wright's, because she's been
more consistent with it.
Yeah. Like she's actually like behind RFK Jr. saying like, yeah, get your government hands off my body and stuff like that. So whatever. Yeah. But she's on late night talk shows and no one brings it up.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if that's also why like her role has been significantly cut, because I was just like, she's really not in this as much.
But hey, give me more Janet. I'd rather have Janet than Hope anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, same, like by a mile. But yeah, I agree that the interconnectivity is just like, it's starting to be its downfall. And then like Keith, you brought up, there's a perfect moment to make a more smarter interconnected one, and they don't do it. And so that's like, I understand that they want certain things kind of connect in the long run, but I think they need to start thinking about each film needs to have some sort of individual stake that affects those characters within the film, and not thinking about, all right, what's going to affect the whole entire Avengers team. Like, that doesn't always need to be the case.
But to that point, like you guys were mentioning, there was a setup at the end where it looked like Hope and Scott would be trapped in the quantum realm. And, they've been clearly kind of like at least hinting towards a young Avengers. So it kind of made sense, like, oh, this is how Stature becomes like the Ant-Man and the Young Avengers. But like, no, she's just going to somehow 30 seconds later open a portal to the quantum realm and save her mom and dad.
Like, they literally said, this is our last chance to get home. And like, you think that when Hope comes back to help Scott against Kang, that's her making a real sacrifice.
Yes.
And like, for them to like defeat this main villain. And, it's like, just if they just cut it being the two of them stuck in the quantum realm, that would have been a perfect ending. That would have like elevated this film for me. It would have made me look at things done in the film differently. It would have like just that one moment, but no, it's okay. They're just back upstairs, and now they're just like a bit worried about Kang as all.
Well, I will say this though. One thing I was kind of like surprised about was how, I mean, it was pretty brutal, like the beating Scott took. Although again, by the time they're back in the real world, he seems fine. But it did make me think that, wow, Kang seems pretty easy to defeat if he's the main bad guy for the next several phases. And it just took an army of ants and Ant-Man and the Wasp to like destroy him. But it turns out that the Kang dynasty is not one Kang. We're actually getting the Council of Kangs. I mean, we got fucking Ramatut and Immortus, and I mean, this is like the holy shit like fanboy moments though, when you're like, wow, they really just did that, didn't they? So it seems to be that it's the Council of Kangs that is going to be the main villain in these next few phases up until Kang Dynasty. What did you think of that? Because like, did you feel the same way, like in the climax, thinking like it's wild that they're gonna have Ant-Man be the one that takes down Kang, this big, like it's like as if when Thanos showed up in Guardians of the Galaxy, like Star-Lord like was the one to defeat him, you know what I mean? Like some minor hero defeats the big bad. Turns out he was not. I don't. Who knows? Maybe he will come back and be the main Kang. He seemed to be Prime Kang. Because anyone who knows, and again, I wasn't a huge Marvel guy, and I do know the Council of Kangs are like all the multiversal versions of Kang, but there's still a prime version of Kang who is the main bad guy, which we were led to believe this version of Kang was supposed to be. So I guess 2 questions. What do you think of the Council, and do you think that the Kang we saw in this movie is A, really dead, or B, somehow will come back? And my thing is, if that's the case, if he's not dead and he comes back, I feel like he's a little diminished because, again, Scott Lang took him out.
Yeah, I really think they should have kept with, especially when Scott's saying, I don't have to win, you just have to lose. Like,
we both have to lose, right.
Like, we both have to lose or whatever. Like, they should have kept, I think, with that energy, actually, because even if, like, Ant-Man, I was like, you know, even if Ant-Man did take out him, I think it should have been a much heavier hit to Scott, too. Not just, like you can't say that line. I feel like you can't establish that line and then like again, everything's great. Okay, now he has to pay for his coffee. Okay, you know.
Yeah, you
like,
undercut the gravity with the way the movie ends.
Yeah, and then he has a little existential crisis moment where he's like, oh wait, there's more coming, and it's just like, yeah, I don't know, but then also he
so
does
unserious.
Yeah,
but that's been a Marvel thing. That's been a signature Marvel move for a while to like undercut the gravity with a one. I mean, you know, we talked about the Snyder fans, but I do, you know, the good faith DC fans, I think always did have a point that, you know, part of the Marvel formula was kind of undercutting the seriousness, and I think there is room for that. I think Marvel and DC, like what we've had, are like the extremes, and
yes,
the Marvel movies that get it right are the ones who are, as I said earlier, balanced emotion with spectacle.
Yeah,
right?
I think that needs to be back in the forefront because, again, still my favorite thing from Phase 4 is Werewolf by Night. And it's sad that I even think that, like, it's an hour special is better.
It's barely an hour, I think.
I think it's better than Wakanda Forever. Like, you hate me, but I'm sorry. Like, that, it was so good and it was just so different than anything Marvel has done. And it also felt like there were genuine, like, stakes there. And it felt, so it's just so frustrating that this one thing that is probably kind of, as of right now, not going to be a huge impact on the overall MCU as the best thing that they've done in a while. And it's just like, it's really frustrating. But I don't know. I want to say I did not hate Quantumania. I thought it was fun. I think all the Ant-Man movies are overall like fun films. But I feel like if you are going to bring in such a heavy hitter villain, you should have then have heavier consequences. That's just my only thing about it.
And, I mean, I don't think I've ever walked out of a Marvel movie and said, I hated that. I mean, like we said earlier, there are DC movies I've walked out and been like, why did I just subject myself to? But, you know, even the worst Marvel movie, like I guess Eternals is the worst rated one. I actually liked it.
I like Eternals. I
thought it was really good.
I don't think it's the worst.
But I didn't, it's not a movie I will return to. And I think that's kind of been the problem with Marvel movies post Endgame, is that I don't think I'll have any desire to return to any of them, you know, more than the first time I saw them in the theater. Like, and the thing is, they're all available at the touch of a button on Disney Plus, and I'm still not like compelled to go back to Shang-Chi or Wakanda.
I've seen Shang-Chi a couple of times because I actually do really like that movie, but I've watched
it twice.
Werewolf by Night like 5 times. So
I mean, and even the television series, like I'm not interested to go back and revisit any of the television series.
And I think a part of the reason why is because so many of them are set up for what's next.
Yeah.
Including, that's also something that happened with Quantumania. I'll also be the outlier here and say that I personally did not enjoy Eternals. I understand, like, you know, reasons to enjoy Eternals. Like, there's some great performances. Again, it comes back to the writing. The writing in these films have mostly, in my opinion, not been good. I hated Multiverse of Madness. Again, it's mainly because of the writing. Like, everyone gave the best performance they could, but like, these writers are not being hired. I saw a TikTok about this, actually, like, noting that in Marvel Phase 4, they're hiring so many more TV writers. And the thing is, like, obviously TV writers can make the jump to film and make really great stuff, but the key reason they're doing that is because they're treating it even more like a TV show now, where these are episodes leading into something that's next. And these are increasingly not being able to stand on their own, which is so frustrating. It's like one of my, and I say this in my article, it's one of my issues with Miss Marvel. I think that they spend too much time and energy. Like, the worst thing about the show, I mean, it was a great show overall, but the worst thing about it was like the convoluted powers origin and the terrible villains. And they both relate to what Kamala is going to be doing later in the MCU, in the Marvels, etc. And it's like, can we please just focus on telling a good individual story, just like they did in the comics? Please. I'm getting so tired. And I think, like, obviously we have yet to see it in the financial returns, but I think increasingly more general audiences are getting tired of this as well. And it's just like, just please tell a good story. That's all we're asking for. Tell a good story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. To go back to your original question, Keith, about the Kangs and like setting that up, I'm just going to say it. I mean, I knew like Kang had multiversal variants and that we'd see them in one way or another, but like, that mid-credit scene made Kang look so goofy. I'm sorry.
The council is goofy. It is a goofy concept. Like, I mean, I was just like surprised that they went for it, you know. And speaking of goofy concepts, we haven't even mentioned MODOK.
Oh my God, I hated him so much. I barely knew anything about MODOK, and I was like, I knew they messed up MODOK here. That's just my opinion, of course.
I mean, I thought it was, again, it was just like one of those things where you're just like, wow, they actually went for it. My only problem with MODOK in the context of the movie was I just thought the CG on him was so terrible. Like they had no effort in making Corey Stoll look like he's supposed to be a giant face inside a robot body, right? It was just like it looked like MS Paint like graphics, you know what I mean? It just, and I don't want to besmirch the VFX artists because I know that they're being like worked to the bone on these Marvel movies, but
not on them.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do MODOK, I mean, again, MODOK is in itself a ridiculous concept, as is Kang. I love how like people are like hyping Kang as this like super threat, but to your point, Swara, he's goofy. Like the fact that he's like, you know, has this council of like variants that he I mean, those like 60s era Marvel comics, 70s and 80s Marvel comics are not like full of gravitas, you know what I'm saying?
But there's a way to do
it for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I just admired like the gall to like put Immortus and Ramatut on the screen. Like it's like giving me like if Matt Reeves were to like the villain in the Batman 2 is King Tut and Egghead. But like in a Matt Reeves version, I'd be like, good on you, dude. If you can figure out a way to make those two characters compelling in a serious way, I'm proud of you. But anyway.
Yeah, I do want to say though, I really, really loved the post-credit scene because
which is basically the scene from Loki. It was
because this is my favorite like MCU show is Loki. I think it's the like kind of probably the second best thing they've done in the phase. So it was really nice to have that scene, and then again to see like Jonathan Majors go back to being more menacing, like in that like little like theater vaudeville thing
Victor
that he's doing. Yeah, so I am really excited to see what's going to happen with season 2 of Loki, especially because Keith's going to be in the season 2. So I don't know. I'm very excited for the Loki stuff, but we'll see.
Before I forget, the thing I was most disappointed with in Quantumania, and Brittany knows how I felt about the announcement of William Jackson Harper's casting. And I said at the time, there is no way he's just playing a freedom fighter named whatever because he's been swirling in the Reed Richards rumors for so long that his one answer to those questions has always been, I don't really like want to be in a Marvel movie, right? Like, or something along those lines.
It was more of, I don't want to play another super smart guy like that again.
I guess. But like, he totally plays this guy like Chidi. Like, it was like, I've seen William Jackson Harper in other things, you know, in Love Life or like, he doesn't play every character like Chidi. This dude was totally Chidi with like a pink head. But he's such a perfect Reed Richards casting that maybe I misinterpreted like his denials in the past of like not wanting to be in a superhero movie or not wanting to be in a Marvel movie. But like, why would you choose this role to be in a Marvel movie when you could be Mr. Fantastic is all I gotta say.
It's about that bag.
You don't think a Mr. Fantastic bag would be much bigger?
I was listening actually earlier today to For All Nerds, and they had the same critique that you did, Keith, that it was basically like a Cheaty on steroids, basically. But also they said, you know, other actors in Marvel like Gemma Chan have done multiple roles. So
you could double cast
who knows?
him again. And you know, we don't know a lot about. Maybe he is a Reed Richards variant, and we just don't realize it. And
oh my god,
until we see Mr. Fantastic, because Peyton Reed is directing Fantastic Four, so he casts William here.
Oh,
so
okay, now like the tinfoil.
Yeah, I know conspiracy theory, but I was disappointed. Like I was like, you know, I thought it was a ruse because at first when they announced William Jackson Harper, they were like in an undisclosed role. It's like, oh shit, you know. And it was like, he's actually playing a freedom fighter. And I was like, no, he's not. He's Reed Richards. And then when he came out and he was like, I'm just a psychic and, you know, I'm going to deliver my lines like Chidi. Like,
maybe this is how they distract us from the truth.
And then he pulls off his shirt and he's got a 4 underneath, but it never happened. And I always get mad at like fans who get disappointed when things don't happen the way their head thinks it's going to happen, their head canon. But I will totally own that my head canon was like, he was Reed Richards, damn it. He's not going to be just some, but he was. So
yeah, he could have. The thing is, he could have auditioned already for, because even though they said that they're barely starting the casting process, he could have already auditioned, and they were just like, you know, no, we're not actually feeling you as Reed. Yeah. But maybe Peyton was like, I like him. I'll give him this role. You know, that could have been what happened. Which, if that's the case, then you know, I just hope whoever they pick as Reed is going to be great. I do hope they make Reed a man of color, regardless of the actor, because I don't know. Especially if Kang is descended from thousands of years ago, there's a way for it to finally end up being, you know, Jonathan Majors. But yeah, I don't know.
But I do find it hard that Jonathan Majors descended from John Krasinski. I would rather have someone else be his ancestor.
No, like let's just call a spade. Like John Krasinski's performance in Multiverse of Madness was very blah. It was just to appease like some fan bros online. Listen, while I like do want Fantastic Four castings to be like people of color, and especially also Ben Grimm to be played by a Jewish actor, I've also like, and this is probably like my fault being online too much and looking at the rumors and such, I've also just gotten exhausted by the casting conversations that I've almost gone past the point of caring. But I don't know, like if it were William Jackson Harper, like I was on the train with you, Keith, like I'm all in, like I'll change my tune, like please let this happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've said all along, I just want the Good Place cast as the Fantastic Four. But anyway, that's not going to happen. Since you're our special guest host this week, Swara, I'm going to let you go first. What's been nerd popping with you?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. This was a delightful conversation as always. 2 things are nerd popping for me. Staying on the Marvel side, there's a new series that has just debuted, both on Disney Channel, and the first 6 episodes are on Disney Plus. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. This series is amazing. The animation is stellar. The voice acting all across the board. You know, they have Lawrence Fishburne and Jennifer Hudson, and they have Alfred Woodard, the main actress. I forget her name. I know her first name is Diamond, who voices Lunella Lafayette. Moon Girl is fantastic. And just like the show is so diverse. It's like so riveting. It has themes that are great for both kids and adults. They tackle like really great themes. Like, for example, they did an episode about like black hair specifically, and you know, not to give too much away, but Jennifer Hudson voices Lunella's hair, and it's amazing. And I love Devil Dinosaur. Like, I just like, and I love that this amazing animated series has no connection to the MCU. That's just like its own amazing Marvel animated series. Like, this is honestly like where I love superhero on-screen stories the most. Like in animated series, where that's Batman the animated series, Spider-Man the animated series, Superman the animated series, Justice League Unlimited, Static Shock, Young Justice, etc. It's like they've like found the formula of how to adapt these comic stories, and like I just want more and more. And I'm so happy for Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur coming into that tradition. On the WB and DC side, so last month, I think it was a month or month and a half ago, I finally got a PS5. You know, the great shortage is done. And one of the games I immediately downloaded, even though I could have gotten it for maybe my computer or iPad, but I really want on PS5, is WB Multiverses, where you can play as characters from across like WB IP and DC media. And
it's like Smash Brothers, but with Warner stuff.
Exactly. This is the game of my dreams. I've always been a DC fan at heart, but also a WB fan at heart. Despite all of the trials and tribulations WB has been through, I still like hold them as number one. And getting to play as Cartoon Network characters like Garnet, as Finn, or Scooby-Doo, or like Shaggy, and then Superman, Batman, and like it's so good. I love multiverses. It's like I love like, you know, how you can jump in and out. That's how I've been gaming mostly, especially with my Switch, like in and out, and not as much long form storytelling, although I do have God of War Ragnarok. But WB Multiverses, love it. Play it if you haven't yet.
Awesome. Brittany, what's nerd popping?
So I actually really dig the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer. I know it's gonna hurt me because I think they're gonna kill Rocket, and Rocket is my favorite character.
I think they might kill multiple Guardians.
Yes, but Rocket is the one that's gonna hurt me.
What if
most.
they all die?
Well, all right, get rid of Star-Lord. But the one that is gonna hurt me the most, I know, is gonna be Rocket.
Yeah.
So James Gunn, I am gonna sue you for emotional damage. But no, I think that looked really fun. And then on the emo side of my nerd pop and stuff, Pierce the Veil's new album and Paramore's album is out. They're both really great. Thick Skull is a great song off of a new Paramore album, and Pierce the Veil's Flawless Execution, 2 perfect songs. Go check those out. And yeah, that's my nerd popping.
Awesome. Well, who knew Ben Affleck would have like the best showing at the Super Bowl? Because his Dunkin' Donuts commercial was my favorite commercial, but he showed up in the Flash. I didn't think he was actually going to show up in the Flash trailer as Bruce Wayne and Batman. Oh, we didn't even mention this in the Flash conversation. He's wearing a blue and gray bat suit. Ben Affleck is. If you go, because I've seen the trailer like literally 1,000 times. When you see Ben Affleck's Batman, he's rocking blue and gray. And you actually, in the TV spot of the Flash, there's a scene where old Bruce goes into his, Batcave closet, and there's various versions of his bat suit, including the 89 suit and the Batman Return suit. To the left of the 89 suit is a blue and gray Michael Keaton bat suit, which, as a collector of the Kenner toys from the 90s, there was a figure called the Iron Winch Batman, which was blue and gray version of the Michael Keaton Batman suit, and it's sitting there in the closet. And I was like, yes, they've canonized the Iron Winch Batman. Anyway, sorry to go off on that tangent, but Ben Affleck was also in the Air Jordan trailer. So what's nerd popping for me, though, is a little bit sadder. We didn't get to talk about this last week because he passed the day after we recorded, but Trugoy, the Dove, Plug 2 of De La Soul passed away last week. And it's doubly sad because De La Soul finally got the rights to their music back. If you were a Teen Titans Go fan, there was a crazy, awesome episode a couple years ago where the Teen Titans teamed up with De La Soul to fight the music industry to get their music back. And they did. They got it back. And it was actually going to start streaming, I think, next week, like the beginning of March. And Plug 2 passed last week. So De La Soul was one of the most important hip hop groups of my generation. And he was like 54, which is crazy young to pass away. So shout out to De La Soul and Plug 2, aka Dave, aka Trugoy the Dove. Rest in peace. Swara, how can people find you on the internet?
Y'all can find me on Twitter, as long as it lasts, at Spider Swars. I'm on Instagram at Swarzy_8. I write for Nerds of Color and do interviews for the website, so check some of those out, including my recent interview with the Flash showrunner, Eric Wallace.
Which blew up, by the way, just so you know.
Yes, thank you so much for everyone for like your warm reception to it. And apologies for that one misquote,
which is
but
one of the
we
reasons
fixed
why
that
it blew
straight
up,
away.
but it's all good.
You know what? We got more views out of it, so there
It
we
worked.
go.
It worked in the long run.
I also write for But Why Though and the New Arab and other websites. You can check out my work on there, and you can find my show on the Hard NOC Network, which is the Middle Geeks, which I co-host with my good friend and co-host May. We talk about any and all things in Southwest Asian, North African, or Middle Eastern and North African Swara/Mina media, and we give our takes on it. So check us out wherever you get your podcast.
Awesome. Brittany.
You can follow me at Hi Britney Monet on Twitter, Instagram, and still Hive, even though I know Hive is like in between being like, I don't know. Yeah.
It's so buggy.
I know. Oy. And then also you can check out at Lituation_pod, which is my other podcast that I do with, everyone who I used to do Black Lightning with, basically. And yeah, that's kind of it that I got going on.
You can find me on Twitter at the Real Chow, _real_Chow, and on Instagram at Real Keith Chow. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on all platforms, and go to hardknockmedia.com where you can find this as well as the Middle Geeks and all the podcasts in the Hard NOC family. Please give us a like and a review if you do. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/the Nerds of Color. Buy merchandise at tpublic.com. Search the Nerds of Color. And subscribe to our videos at youtube.com/the Nerds of Color. That is Hard NOC Life for this week, the 300th episode of Hard NOC Life.
Woo!
Yeah, we did 300 of these bad boys. For the next 300, until then.
So maybe a retrospective of Zack Snyder's 300. That's going to be the next episode.
This is Hard NOC Life. Yeah, that's what we need.